Hi. Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Daniel. Thanks for coming here today again. So we're just waiting for our guest speaker to join us and we can start. Hi, Miss Onize. Hi, I can see our guest is online with us. Welcome, Coach Bookies. Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you
How's it?
too?
I'm all right. I've been looking forward to this,
Mhm.
so I'm super excited.
Mhm.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invite. It's a pleasure having you here. So
Thank
we
you.
go right into it. So,
Okay. All
all
right.
right. So
So, hello everyone around the world, wherever you're watching us. It's a very good day here in Lagos, Nigeria, and it's a very great opportunity, to continue to talk about mental health. It's something that personally I'm passionate about. But before we jump right in, let me just introduce myself. My name is Bukola Lameed. People call me Therapy Queen. I make
yes.
sure that I create relatable solutions for people's mental and emotional wellness, especially for children and young adults. I'm a mental behavioral therapist. I'm a clinical psychologist in training, and I do a lot of work around mental health, family mental health, children mental health, anything that has to do with your emotions, anything that will make you to be mentally and emotionally stable. We are always available. I run an organization called the Safety Republic International, and we serve this mental and emotional wellness through therapy. We do consultation, we do training, we do intervention, and we do counseling. So those are the things that we do basically around mental health. So I jumped right in. When I saw the topic for today, I said the mental health of the 21st century. And I said, 21st century. Okay. So I want to put it this way. I want to start this way. You see, 21st century child and a child that was born in the 18th century are the same. What actually makes them different is it's still the same templates, but different strategy. So I give an analysis. You bought a phone 15 years ago. It might be very impossible for you to still want to use that same phone in this year because a lot of things has improved, the capacity, the storage system, a lot of things. It's still the same phone, right? You still make the same call,
Yeah.
but evolution has happened to the phone. That's the same way you have to look at a child. It is still the same child with the same head, the same eyes, everything, the physiology, the genetic, the biology. But what is different is how you handle the child. Remember, we're talking about children this thing, and I'm going to be very peculiar and very particular. Now, that's an analogy. Now, look at a child as a package that comes like a gift to you. Remember that for every package that you have, I'm talking about mental health. Don't forget, but I want you to understand what a child means first before we take it into mental health, okay? So the child is like a total package that comes to you as a gift. Imagine somebody giving you maybe a television set or anything, any electrical gadgets. And for every package you have, for every gift you have, you would have what we call the user manual. Very important.
Manual.
Never forget. It's called the user manual. So for every child, there is a user manual for every child. And this user manual is very unique for every child. So I laid that foundation that the children are the same thing, but their user manual is different. And as
That's
years
different.
go by, the user manual keep changing because of the
Changing.
technology, in quotes, technology. Now you have touch screen. Those days there is only button that you press on your phone. Things has evolved. So that is how you should view a 21st century child. What a 21st century child is experiencing is a bit different from what a child who was 19th century child is belabored with so many technological difficulties. And I'm coming to that. So we should understand that that is the
Okay.
peculiarity of what we term a 21st century child. Now, what is mental health? When you look at mental health, everybody has mental health. That's one of the things that I used to start with when I talk to people. When you say mental health, there's this formation around mental health. And mental, okay, psychosis and mental illness just runs into their head because our environment is a bit peculiar. We don't understand what mental health is. So anytime you hear mental health, just think, oh, it's people who are in Yaba left or Aru. No,
Yeah.
mental health actually is the foundation of every human being. Everybody has mental health, and mental health is the foundation of every other health, physical, spiritual, any other health you can talk about. It comes from mental health. So when you now put mental health and child together, then you know that it's a very, 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 very critical topic that we need to talk about. So I've established mental health, bedrock of any other health that you can have. If something happens to your mental health, it streams down to every other health that you have. Okay. So when you now talk about the mental health of a child, in my field and as my experience as a psychologist and a child mental health coach, I have noticed that we have some three peculiar issues that is affecting children in recent times: anxiety, depression, depression,
Okay.
and I'm going to remember the last one. There are actually three, but see, you see these first two, we need to understand how these things come about. Everybody has to be anxious. There's something in our brain that's called the amygdala. It is a fire alarm. It makes us to identify danger. And if we don't easily detect danger and address danger, the danger might be at risk for us. I hope you understand. But when you look at children and anxiety, children hasn't yet developed that capacity to understand anxiety. Because you see, the brain fully develops between the age of 25 and 30. So as a child and a young adult, their brain is still developing. So that part of the brain that is logical to identify anxiety, to easily express what they are feeling, is not fully formed. That is why you see a lot of children throw tantrums. That's why you give them a lot of names, you label them. You say they have bad behavior, you said they are rebel, you said they have is as a result of their inability to capture their emotion. As an adult, it might be a bit easy for you to manage your emotion, but children, for who they are, may not necessarily have the ability to manage their emotion because that capacity to manage it has not yet fully evolved. So it is very important for us to have responsible, and I put the responsible in capital letter, responsible adults to understand children. And when you understand children, you will develop what we call empathy. Because when you know that when this child is exhibiting some particular kind of emotion or behavior, that it is not necessarily a bad behavior, but a child who is trying to understand the world. Let me tell you that for every emotion a child exhibits, the child learn it from an adult. Children understand the world from the eyes of the adults. You must understand that. So for every behavior a child exhibits is learned from an adult. Okay, so when a child is anxious and we are patient enough to understand what is causing this anxiety, one of the issues that we have as adults is we raise children thinking like an adult. You cannot raise a thriving child thinking like an adult. It won't work. Okay, so that is why you have to go into the mind of a child to understand how the child thinks and reason. That is when you understand the mental health of a child. But if you keep thinking and you keep addressing children's issue like an adult, and you keep looking at a child as if you are dealing with an adult, will keep having issues with the mental health of children. And whatever you are as a child, adult, an adult is a reflection of how their childhood was. Any behavior you exhibit as an adult started from childhood. So that is why it is very important for us to understand the mental health of the 21st century child. A lot of things are happening around them now. And you see, there's nothing like bad behavior. I hope I'll have time to explain that. You see, people do bad good intention. Let me say that again. People do bad things having good intention. We are the meaning making machines. We are the one that gave that interpretation as bad because our perception is different, because we don't have that understanding to look at it from the eye of the person that is doing it, so that you understand that this person may not have the capacity to understand that this is bad behavior. Let me tell you, for every behavior people exhibit, they have good intentions, either good or bad. It started from a good intention. I give a very controversial example. A child abuser, a pedophile, likes children. But if you look at the intention is the pedophile wants to satisfy his sexual urge. That's a good intention. But at the end of the day, became a bad intention because of the action he took. So for everyone, it starts with a good intention before it's now interpreted, or before it now metamorphosized into a bad intention. So let me now go back to children. Children have anxiety just like adults. There's this myth we talk around Yoruba. Please permit me. Yoruba people will say kilomode mo. And you see, this is a myth because children knows a lot of things. But the way they know it is a bit different from how an adult know it. So I give an example. Children sees the world in a very low resolution, but adults see it in a very high resolution. But when an adult understand that a child sees the world in a very low resolution and they have the understanding and they come into place to help that child to function well, then they become a better adult. So we need to understand that you cannot raise an adult. You must understand that children think through with their emotions. They are emotion making machines because they have not built that logical part of their brain to understand how the world works. And if we don't understand this singular fact, it poses a threat to the mental health of the 21st century child, because every child will go through anxiety, every child will go through depression. But you see, there's a spectrum. There's the mild, there's the moderate, there's the severe, and there's the chronic.
The
So
severe.
most of us have mild mental health issues. Okay. But when we don't have good guidance, when we don't have good information, when we don't have people who have empathy and understand that we are human, then it can now transform into moderate or transform into severity
To
or become
severe.
chronic.
Chronic.
Okay. So it goes through that spectrum. So there is no one who can escape, the issues that comes with mental health. What is mental health? Mental health is the ability for you to cope with everyday stresses of life.
Yeah.
So we understand the stress in life, but the capacity to cope with it is a reflection of how good or bad your mental health is. It is now more peculiar for children because they are not yet adults. They don't have the capacity to manage their emotions. They need guidelines. And if a responsible adult is not available, they are misled. Okay, so I tell you, in the line of my work, we have realized that there is high prevalence of substance use in children. And people, I wonder, and you see, one of the reasons why children take substance is to kill pain. So that gives us an insight. One of the substance that is mostly abused is a painkiller. Painkiller. So they take a lot of painkillers. At the end of the day, become addicted to that painkiller. And why are they taking painkillers? It's because they want to tame down the pain that they feel
Yes.
inside. So this is a reflection that a lot of children are facing a lot of emotional pain, and they are finding ways by which they want to repress it. And the problem about repressed emotion is when you repress an emotion, it becomes toxic. Whatever we are seeing now in the life of adults in the globally is a result of all the repressed emotion that they had in their childhood days. A lot of us went through a very stressful childhood. We call it adverse childhood experiences. So
Vast
many of
childhood
us, which
experience.
has it
Yes.
that 50% of children had gone through of adults had gone through one or two adverse childhood experiences. And when
Childhood
you go
experience.
through adverse childhood experiences as an adult, as a child, you would have mental health issues when you become an adult. And that is reflection of what we are seeing globally now, because we had a lot of adults who went through childhood in a very stressful manner. So now, how you're going to deal with a 21st century child is these things that I'm going to talk about. Okay. A lot of us lack what we call active listening. Active, when you are dealing with a child and you want to ensure that you are managing a child and the child should have a good mental health, you must cultivate active listening. And you see, active listening is not only when you hear, okay? Effective communication is just 7% verbal. Just 7% verbal. So the every other thing is your physiology, your tonality, the way you roll your eye, the way you talk, things constitute to effective communication. And remember, I said from the beginning that children understand emotion more than logic. I give a very good example. We have this controversy around punishment and discipline. Now, let me analyze it through that, because punishment and discipline is one of the major things that affect children mentally and emotionally. You see, when you want to correct a child, the the bottom line is you want to address a bad behavior, right? And you want to enhance a good behavior. So in doing that, you want to establish a good behavior. But you see, you cannot subject something to a negative feeling and you expect a positive feeling from it.
The positive.
Do you understand the analysis now? So you can't subject somebody to go through an unhealthy feeling and you expect that at the end of that tunnel, that
There's a
person
positive
will
feedback.
give you a healthy feeling. You cannot
Mm.
subject a child to an animalistic behavior and you expect the child not to exhibit the trait of an animal. Okay?
Mm.
Your training, when you want to enhance positive behavior, you must do something we call positive reinforcement. I give an
Yeah.
example. A child who misbehave, okay, you want to beat a child. I am on both school of thought. You can beat your child, it's your child, but you can't beat mine, okay? But you can beat your child.
Mm.
You want to establish a good behavior. But you see, in beating your child, a lot of us leave the part of the correction. We pass our pain and we leave the message behind. So you see, in trying to beat a child, you are passing your pain. If you refuse to tell the child the reason why the child is being beaten or punished, and you just slap the child, bah, bah, and that's the end. And a child is not having a lesson learned from that information or that behavior, then the child begins to see the world as a very terrible place. Because even the way you are beating a child, you cannot smile when you are beating a child. You are angry, you are upset, you are frustrated. And remember, I tell you that children read more of your emotions than logic. You must pass the message. You must give reason. You must reinforce positive behavior. You must make the child understand that the
Mm.
reason why you're going through this punishment in court is because of whatever you have done. And you must establish a lesson from it. Next time, what will you do? Then the child can now learn through that kind of negative reinforcement. But what we do a lot of times is we just pass our pain and we withhold the message. Yes,
Mm.
thank you, Idris. Beating does nothing for correction. Beating enhances animalistic behavior. So those are the things that threatens the mental health of the 21st century. We
Definitely.
should do is we should have good parenting skills. You don't have to
Mm.
have a child before you can, have a good parenting skill. Good parenting skill simply means that you must understand the child that you have, not the one you think you have. They are two different things.
You
So
have,
we have
yeah.
a lot of
True.
adults who deal with children thinking that they know that because they think that they know that child is. Remember, I
Child is.
mentioned user manual. You must read a
Yeah.
child user manual. This child came to you to this world as a total package, and the user manual is being handed over to you. That's where we now have the personalities. That's now we now have, there are a lot of genetic behavior. There is the nature and nurture that comes into play, and you must understand where this child is coming from. So don't raise the child you think you have.
You have.
Raise the child you have. They are two different things. And I
Mm.
say that again.
Mm.
Don't raise you have. When you raise a child you think you have, you are raising a dysfunctional adult. Because you see, a child is transit. There's nothing like child in the world of psychology because a child simply means a growing adult. Okay? A child
Mm.
is not static. Because a child who is 3 years old today, by tomorrow, he or she becomes 3 years, 1 year, 1 day. By next tomorrow, the child becomes 3 years, 2 days. What that is telling us is that a child is a growing adult. And a child is a reeling wool. You know what reeling wool is? A child has the capacity to pick things from the environment. And if you are the one that
Mm.
exhibit a lot of unhealthy behavior, you will raise a child with a lot of unhealthy behavior. You will kill the personality of the child. You will impose your own eye of who you think that child is. I mean, you
Mm.
cannot impose a fish to fly trees. when the fish is not a monkey. You can't expect a monkey to thrive to swim in waters. A monkey is conditioned to fly, to, do you understand the analysis now? So, is your child a monkey? Is your child a bird? Is your child, who is that child?
Yeah.
If you subject a fish to fly, then the fish cannot function well. That is when you would start having children or young adults who have mental health issues. You must understand the child that you are raising. You must raise the one that you have. You must not use the remote of Sony TV to operate Samsung TV. That is another analysis that I can use.
Yeah.
Okay, so because you have a Samsung TV, it comes with its own remote. By the time you are using a Sony remote to operate a Samsung TV, you are already raising a dysfunctional adult. Remember, you don't raise children, you raise adults.
You raise adults. Okay.
You don't raise children. You don't. Childhood is transitory. It is just a state. It is just a phase. It's like you're going somewhere. Childhood is like a journey. You're going, you must prepare for that destination. So childhood is like journey, and adulthood is the destination. So you don't raise children, you raise
You raise
adults.
adults.
So whatever you see adults do now is as a function of how they were raised. Whatever mental health
True.
issues that you find in adults now, it was pinned down during childhood days. Because you see, whoever you are as an adult is as a result of who you are, is as a result of who you were as a child. So if you want there's nothing like perfection. You just have to take what you have and roll with it. Then another thing that poses threat to the mental health of a 21st century child is when you don't validate their emotion. This is very critical,
True.
and I'll quickly talk about it. See, very critical, you must validate children's emotion. You are the one that, that you have imprinted a particular interpretation to their emotion. You are being silly. What is wrong with you? Are you a child? And I wonder, Sally, how can an adult be asking a child if he's a child? I mean, that is silly. So it tells me that adult, something is wrong with the adults, because children must behave like children. A child must
Children. Yeah.
behave like a child. A child must throw tantrums. A child to a certain level must have a bit of misconduct. Thank you. Somebody is asking how you validate emotions. Now, very important. See, there's nothing like good or bad emotion. There's nothing like good or bad emotion. When emotions comes to you, emotion is like a messenger, and it comes to you and you use it and you dump it. So when you validate emotion, when a child cries, for instance, instead of saying, "Why are you crying? What's your problem? Are you a child? Come on, clear your eyes. Man up. Don't you know you're a boy?" You are not validating the emotion. You are repressing the emotion. You are making the child feel less of themselves, because crying is a very valid emotion. I'm using that as an example because Bertrand is asking. So whichever emotion a child brings. So now let me give you an example of how you validate emotion. A child comes to you and a child is grumpy and you say, something is worrying you. Can you share? It might be an silly emotion, okay? But understand that that is the person's emotion and you must accept it. You must validate it. You must recognize it. You must understand that it is their emotion. It is not yours. You are not the one that is crying. They know why they are crying. And it is very important for you to let them know that you share, you empathize with them. You see, children don't need you to help them in anything. That's another myth. A lot of adults or anything. The only thing that they need you for, listen to me carefully, is for you to regulate their emotion. Because you see, you as an adult, you're like a thermostat. You know what a thermometer, pardon me. You should be a thermometer, not a thermostat. A thermostat just shoots up the energy. Once it's hot, they take it very hot. Once it's cold, they take it very cold. But if
It's
you're a
very cool.
thermometer, you are the one that should regulate. When you see that emotion
Late.
is growing high for the child, and the child doesn't have the capacity to regulate their emotion, you, as the adult in the child's life, will now do what? You regulate.
Regulate.
And how do you regulate? That is when you validate the emotion, you accept it, you understand that this child is a child, and at this time, this is what this child is feeling. And you must understand with the child. You must have what we call empathy. Stop raising your child thinking like an adult. If you continue to raise children that way, we will continue to churn out dysfunctional adults. And that's why we have a lot of dysfunctional adults. Adults who have very low self-esteem, adults who have very low self-confidence. All those very big emotions when they were younger, you shut them down. You did not allow them to express themselves. You have
Express.
already labeled emotions. You have already told them crying is bad. You have already told them that they should not show how they feel. You must show how you feel because you are human.
Human.
And all those things starts from childhood. And I tell you that a 21st century child is very peculiar because they are belabeled with so many things that was not there 10, 15, 20 years ago. Now, let me give you this assignment. After this, I want you to go through generations, psychological generations. We have baby boomers, we have the generation X, we have generation Y, we have generation
Right.
Z, we have the alpha generation. Go and read about them. They all have their psychological resemblance and they behave in a particular manner. So if you are using the template of baby boomers to raise the generation Z, you have already lost. So you must that's why I said you must understand the child you have, not the one. Parenting template is still
One
the
you
same.
think you have.
I hear a lot of people, they want to tear their clothes, if you can allow me to use that language. They want to tear their clothes and they raised me well. That's the way they raised me. And I look at me today. You are not fine. Hear me. Therapy queen is telling you that you are not fine. They just told you that you are fine, but you are not. Because there are a lot of things that is wrong with our parenting template, even though it is still the same, but the strategy has to change. We have to update it, just like we update our OS, just like we update our application. So those are the things, and that's the reason why we must continue to have this conversation, why we awareness, why we must continue to do all this Facebook talk, Instagram talk, and why we have to even leave social media, because you see, majority of the people who even need this may not be on social media. I
True.
tell a lot of people, I tell them that if you raise your own children well and you think you are fine, in fact, you are not fine, because the people who did not raise their own
Not raise
children
theirs.
will end up
More.
destroying the child that you think that you have raised. About parenting and everything, it has to be holistic. It is not enough for us to stay on social media, and because social media has a particular audience, and people who are on social media too, they have they are some kind of peculiar audience as well, and we need to carry this gospel to them as well, because they are our, I'm not trying to relegate anyone, but because they are pepper seller, they are the mechanics, they are the house helps, they are the, they are the ones who somehow in the grassroots, and they are very, very, very instrumental in the in how the total raising of a child will be involved. And when health, I told you, is basic. So you must validate children's emotion. Very important. You see, when you validate a child's emotion, you raise the self-confidence by 50%. You must create what we call open-ended questions with children. What do I
Yes or no?
Not give children close-ended question, you will not have the insight into how they feel. You will not be able to have long and effective conversation with them.
Communication. Mm.
But when you give them open-ended question, from the answer that you are giving you are turning it back to them. And before you know it, you're already having conversation of 30 minutes, 1 hour. And within that period, you already picked whatever you want to pick. But if you ask a child, how are you today? Fine. That's
Fine.
end. You may not
True.
get the meaning behind the fine, because really not
Fine.
be fine. But because you have asked a close-ended question, you have restricted the conversation.
Restricted.
Yes, it's been restricted, so you may not have access to that child. And I tell you, if that continues and is consistent, you would eventually build a wall between you and that child, and the mental health of that child is at risk. Very, very important, because you see, children do of because a lot of adults have double standards. So they look at you,
True.
they do what you do. That's why you see a 3-year-old child breastfeeding her baby doll. Nobody taught her. Children learn by observation. And whatever they pick up by observation can either enhance their mental health or deteriorate their mental health. It is very important. These are the very, very subtle things that a lot of adults they take for granted, and it affects children's mental health well-being. So when a child comes to you and tells you they feel this way, please don't shout at them. What's wrong with you? We have a way of trying to, shut down the emotion of children, and it is very, very unhealthy. So you want to raise a 21st century child, you must have empathy. You must try to look at the child. You must look at life from the eyes of the child. Yeah, the child is not an adult. The child does not have that experience you have. The child needs you to help them to regulate how they feel. And if you don't help them to regulate how they feel, they either explode, depending on their personality, or they repress. And if they repress, it's bad. If they explode, it's
Bad.
bad all the same. But
Bad.
as a responsible adult in their life, you now have the function or the responsibility to regulate them in a way that will help their mental health. I saw a question there. Let me just quickly
Okay.
see. I think I saw a question. Let me just go.
We have few ones already. I was just waiting for you to round up so we can take
Okay.
them.
So I think we should just start picking questions, because from there it will help us, to.
Okay. I saw one about kids that are being raised in orphanages. How do you manage their emotions? People kids
Oh,
raised in orphanage. Yeah.
you see, I tell a lot of people, even if you are not raised by your dad or by your biological parent, the point here is the person that is raising you, that significant other, what template is that person using?
Using.
Let it be. Even if you are raised in the best is nurture, right? You are raised in the best environment, but the template is wrong. It is still boiled to the same thing. But even if you are raised, we've seen a lot of children. I'm in Lagos, Nigeria. We've seen a lot of children who are raised in Ajegunle, okay? But their behavior is healthier than people who we believe were raised in a seemingly healthy environment. So raising a child healthily and has nothing to do with raising them in an orphanage home, raising them in the midst of parents. No, the peculiar thing, what comes in play is how
Is
are
the
they raising them,
guardian.
regardless of the environment. What template are they using
The person using.
to raise that child? That is the most important, and that is what we should take cognizance of. So,
I
is there
have
any other
another one. A
question?
child raised A child raised by a single parent, can it affect the child's emotional behavior?
A child raised by a single parent, can it
Yeah,
affect?
can it have
Okay.
the emotional
So,
behavior?
like I said, even if you have three parents, two mothers and one father, if you don't
Mm.
adopt that healthy parental,
The child. Mm. I think you have a network problem. Okay. I'll just go through some comments while we wait for Coach to join us. Um, so we need more awareness for the parents and caregiver. Absolutely. I feel we, the parents, have more work to do because we are responsible for these kids and they're quite vulnerable. Let me see if I can add back Coach Bookies. I think our network is bad. 1 minute. Okay. Network is bad, yes. So while we wait for Coach Bookies, we can still interact. I really need an answer to the single parent question. Okay, she's back. Welcome back.
thank you. All right, so the person was asking about single parenting. Single parenting is the mindset.
Mm,
What is
okay.
single parenting? Single parenting is when just one significant other is raising a
Mm,
child. So you see,
mm,
and I said before we go offline, I said either you were raised by three fathers and two mothers. If they don't
mm,
adopt that parenting template that will raise a thriving child, it is still the same. We are children who were raised by very well. So you see, for the fact that you're already thinking
mm,
that you're a single parent, that is a limiting factor for you already. That means you have kept yourself in a limited mindset. You being a single mom or single dad
mm,
does not affect you raising a thriving child. Because I have seen a lot of children, so many children who were raised of their father and their mom, and they thrive. So these things has to be balanced. What are you doing? What are you
true.
putting in place? What are you doing as a single mom? Do you understand all those
Mm,
things? Do you know what parenting means? Okay. And if you
mm,
believe that, okay, because of your culture or your mindset or your belief system, you need another significant other, it might not necessarily be your spouse or the child's father. It might be another significant other who understand parenting. Let it just
true.
be someone who is educated enough, who is empowered enough to raise that unique child, regardless how
Mm,
is raised. Because in raising a
mm,
child, I mentioned it, we have two factors, the nature and nurture. And in mental
nature and
health as
nurture.
well, we have the resilience and the vulnerability. So what that means is for
Mm,
every child, there is every tendency for any child to have mental health issues. Remember, I told you we all have a mental health. We all do
mm.
have mental health. But the
We all do,
ability
yeah.
or yeah, or child having. So what that simply means is that, remember I told you about that spectrum, that's mild, severe, moderate, and chronic. So
Mm,
if you already have a mild mental health issues and you understand how to raise that child, you may even eradicate that mildness and it may not
mm,
happen again. But if you
mm,
don't have the capacity, it will trigger severity. It may trigger chronic, and that will even
mm,
affect the mental health of that child. So the issue here is, what are you raising? How are you? I have two
Raising.
audio books that talked about how to raise a child. I have the one that talked about the parenting manner. Nobody gave us any manual from anywhere to raise a child. But over the years, by observation, by scientific research, we have realized some things that we need to take out. Remember, I told you that the template remains the same, but what is changing is the strategy. So if you understand the strategy, and part of the strategy is for you to understand, you must understand the child that you are raising. So that if you have three children, you can't raise them the same way. That's part of the strategy. So you cannot do over-the-counter parenting. You cannot do helicopter parenting. You cannot do hoovering parenting. You cannot do one cap fits all parenting. You must understand each of the children, because they are all unique in the way
Unique
they are
and different.
attend to things, in the way they relate their emotions, in the way they become expressive. So that is what matters. Once you understand these strategies, give a child, put a child anywhere. Once you put that template in place, you would realize that you're going to raise, pardon me, I'm on transit and I have to do this.
Okay, we're rounding up soon. Just one or two more questions and we'll let you go, Coach.
All right. So I hope the person who is asking about single parenting understand that. And please, if you don't understand, you can still reach her. You can still reach my host inbox. She will reach out to me, because you see these things again. When I talk in public places like this, I don't propose as a professional. I must understand that child first. I must understand
First.
the person that is even raising the child. Because you see, the problem of the world is the adult, and the solution is a child. So whatever misbehavior a child exhibits, it's coming from the adult. So as a practitioner, I can't tell you, go and sit down, go and pray, go and sleep. No. What I can say is those general things that we're talking about now. But when we now have to streamline it to how you're feeling or what you need to do, then we need to now sit together, understand you, understand the child, because you see, a lot of us do what we call displacement, displace our emotions on our children. We project our inadequacies on our children, and this invariably it affects our children's mental health. If we are not feeling fine, our children will not feel fine. That is just how it is. Because, like I told you.
True. Network, be nice to us, please. Whilst we're waiting for her network to come back on, let's see some of the comments. So, why do some boys who were raised without their father in the picture always unruly when they get to certain age? I think it all goes back to what she said earlier about how the parent raises the child. And among lessons learned is validation and regulation of emotion. That's very important. We always need to do that positive reaffirmation and positive reinforcement. Torturing and beating kids don't help with anything. Someone is asking, what about mental health that are genetic? What about when the mental health is genetic? Let's see if we can get Coach Buki back and she will take that. If not, let's see how it goes. Okay. Absolutely. Hi.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back. 10 more minutes and we'll be done. Thank you so much for your time. So we have one question here. It says, what about when the mental health is genetic?
Yes. We have a lot of mental health. Mental health is not genetic. We need to clear that English. Mental health is just the health of our emotional wellness. It is mental illness that can be genetic. Okay,
Genetic.
so
Yeah.
don't let us, yeah. I told you from the beginning that everybody has mental health. So when your mental health is not good, then it becomes a mental illness.
Mental
Do you
illness.
understand it
Yeah.
now? So we all have
Yeah.
mental
Coach
health.
Sam used
Mental
to
health is
refer.
how how we are able to put our thoughts, feelings together to create a
Mm,
behavior.
mm,
Okay,
mm,
so let me give it. You are able to manage your thing, your feeling to create and healthy behavior. So when your thinking and feeling does not align and it brings an abnormal behavior, then you say, okay, the person doesn't have a good mental health. And someone doesn't have a good mental
mm,
health has mental illness. So yes,
mm,
mental illness can be genetic. And like I said from the beginning, when mental illness may be very mild to an extent where you may not even be significant. You may not even notice it. But when
mm,
a good parental template is not in place, when the child doesn't have a good nurture, then it can be triggered from mild to moderate, from moderate to
mm.
severe, then from
To
severity
severe,
to chronic.
to chronic.
Okay. So yeah. So we have some children like that who have mental illness that are genetic. They got it from their parents. But if they can take care of it well, if they can seek professional help on
Mm,
time, and I tell you that ADHD, depression, and anxiety, very common mental illness that children
mm.
suffer. Okay, so if they
True.
can, if you can easily detect it, let me give you some signs. Okay, because a lot of parents don't even know how to detect these things for children.
Mm,
So for children who have misconduct disorder or defiant disorder, things like that, children who are they are hyperactive. We have a lot of children who are too hyper.
mm,
Okay, for instance, they are in class and they are easily distracted. They are looking here, they're looking there, they are not sitting in a place. Something is wrong. The boy, you see, because children may necessarily, depending on their age, they necessarily not come to you and say, this is how I'm feeling. Because even them, the brain doesn't have the capacity to decode what that feeling is.
mm,
Okay,
mm,
so you as an adult, you are the one that is trained or empowered to observe, to know that, oh, this thing is not a normal behavior. What is happening? Then you
mm,
will now seek help. So if you have children who have very less, very really distracted, okay, or they find too much attention, they just want your attention, it's just too much, or every little thing, they are too sensitive. Those are the things that you have to watch out in children. Or you have children who have very low moods. They are some of them can talk and play, but suddenly you just see them going down that curve. They are withdrawn. They don't talk to anyone. Something is wrong somewhere. It could be as a result of trauma. It could be as a result of trauma or abuse. And like I told you from the beginning, I told you that children, the brain can interpret all those things in three different ways. The amygdala can either freeze, it can either fight back, it will freeze fight, or it will flee. And the fourth one, the recent research in mental health in children, is collapse. So a child can either freeze. That's why you realize some children who are being abused, and a lot of people tell them, why did you run? Why did you shout? Why did you say anything? But because that time they froze. The amygdala, they shuts down. They
mm,
just froze. They can't do anything. And sometimes it happens in adults as well. Some, when they sense danger, they run. That's flee. Some, when they sense danger, they fight back. That is the reason why
mm,
you must understand the child that you have. And some, they collapse. They just go blank. Okay. So these are the
mm.
things that we must understand in children. And children can internalize a lot of things if you don't give them the opportunity to express themselves. Eyes for
Mm,
why you realize, even as an adult, you will remember something that someone did to you as a child. You know, you can remember what happened when you were 3 years old because an emotion was attached to it. It is not everything you will remember as a child, but because there is a particular emotion that was expressed in that behavior, you will not forget it. Do you understand now? So that's why we have mentioned that children are more emotions in motion. They are reeling emotions. And if you don't understand those emotions, if you don't regulate it, it becomes a problem. I hope I have answered that question. Do you have any other question?
Not really. No, I think we're done with the questions. Thank you so much for having.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, and I think we give kids less credit because I think they pick a lot of things consciously and unconsciously, and we also need to pay attention to that. And I think key work needs to be done with the parents since they are the major stakeholder in all of this. They need to understand all these techniques and manual on how to raise their kids and all. So thank you so much for joining us today. Yes, I've learned a lot, and I hope our viewers have learned a lot as well. All right, thank you so much.
Seek help. If you notice anything that is wrong with a child, seek help. Seek professional help. Seek help from people who understand children and adolescents. Please. You see, I am not an anti-religion, but it is not everything that we defer to spirit. If your mental health...
True. Network will be nice.
That we have, not the one we think we have. If that's the last thing you're going to take away from this conversation, tell people that they should raise the child they have, not the one they think they have.
They have. Yeah. Very important. Very important. Network will not allow us shine. We've come to almost to the end of the session. Thank you all for joining us today. And for our active participants, we've not forgotten about the giveaway. Our team are watching and seeing those that have been very interactive, and they will be reaching out to each and every one for their own giveaway. So thank you so much. And tomorrow we'll be having Coach Amanda with us, and she's going to shed more light on the same topic. And hope to see you all tomorrow as well. So Coach Buki just said thank you for having me today. I think the network only has said that. So thank you all. Do have a lovely evening and see you tomorrow. Bye.